Hey guys, Jon Gums, Dakota Grappler live here. Just coming to you on a Sunday night. Got a special guest with us, Shane Sparks on the far right. We're going to talk wrestling, and hopefully this will last about an hour. We'll see how long it goes. We're just going to talk. If you don't know me, I guess I'm Jon Gums, owner and editor of Dakota Grappler, longtime promoter, and that's pretty much my niche in this wrestling world, I guess. And right beside me is Bill Holton. He is my right-hand man, I always say, and he is my college guru that we talk wrestling. And then on the far side, I've listened to Shane for a long time, Big Ten Network. I know he's involved in track, Sports Engine, everything that way. I'm going to have him introduce himself, and then we'll go from there. I'll have Bill first introduce himself, and then I'll go over to Shane. Bill?
Yeah, Bill Holton. I'm coming at you from Central North Dakota. Just obviously a longtime wrestling fan. I wrestled, did a little coaching. Actually, Shane, I coached in your home state there of Wisconsin for a few years, up in Superior, Wisconsin, way up.
Nice.
Way up in the northwest corner of your state. So, but nowadays, my time is spent being a wrestling fan. I'm still a wrestling dad for a little bit longer here. I got one son in college wrestling his last semester, I guess. So, just a big fan of sport. Been a fan of Shane for as long as he's been on the network, and always brings a lot of energy. It was fun watching him even just the other night. And the Iowa-Nebraska duel. So
I was happy.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, that was a good. That Hawkeye team is really good. Nebraska too is very solid, but Iowa's that's a pretty special group.
And then you got one of your buddies on here. You're going to see some stuff pop up here every once in a while.
Well, I was going to pick it up by saying if you guys were recommended by Jim Makovsky, you're friends of mine because, and I'll say this publicly, I've met so many great people in this sport. I mean, so many great people. And it's just an awesome group. But the coolest guy I've ever met. If someone said, give me the coolest guy you've met in the sport, a guy that if you got a weekend to go to Vegas with you taking in your car, front seat is Jim Makovsky. That's got the seat. He is so funny. He is a really cool guy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No, we got stuff. I don't know what this is about. Can you see anything in my background?
Oh, nice. I got about 30 boxes downstairs. Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah, I got at least 30 boxes. What am I talking? I got about 60 boxes downstairs. So,
some inside joke. He said, can you do this for me? And I said, oh, definitely.
That's funny. You want to hear the story quick?
Yes, definitely. Start us off with a good story.
The quick story on this is going back to 1994 high school wrestling. I was a senior in high school. I was wrestling 103. When I was a freshman in high school, I weighed 81. So I'd have to drink 8 pounds of water to wrestle 103 and go out and just get blasted. That's how it was. So when I was a junior, I weighed 103. Senior year, I'm cutting weight. I'll never forgive myself for it because why do most people cut weight? To take the easier path. And if there's one thing I've learned in 20 years when you deal with high-level wrestlers or high-level anybody, they don't want the easy path. They want the hard path. I mean, I can promise you, Jordan Burroughs wants to make another Olympic team by beating Kyle Dake. I can promise you that. Like he'd be devastated if he didn't get to Russell Dake. They want the hard. So anyways, I'm still dealing with that, trying to forgive myself. But anyways, it was a week before the state tournaments, and I was ranked number 1 all year and cutting weight, not enjoying the sport at all, not getting any better. Going to practice to cut weight, not getting any better. I mean, that was just looking back on it now. It's just such a man. I would have done so many things different. But anyways, I used to work at a radio station in high school, and the state tournament started on a Thursday. So it's Sunday. I got 5 days. I'm so close. I mean, I've been counting down the days, unfortunately, after about a weekend of the season, like, 70 more days left, 60 more days left. So I'm down to 5 days. And I was battling my weight all season, but I never quite, I never really lost it. Didn't have what I call my Barry Davis moment. Okay, so I'm in this radio station. I'm all alone in there, and I go up in the break room, and there is a box of Wheat Thins, and it had not been opened yet. So I'm like, my first question, looking back at it now, is they weren't mine. So why did I open the box of Wheat Thins? Whatever. You're 18 years old. You're not real bright. But I remember opening the box of Wheat Thins because I was going to have one. And then I'm, go down to the board, doing board up for a basketball game or football game. And then I go back up there and I'm going to just have another one. Just one more. Well, long story short, I eat the whole box of Wheat Thins. I end up eating a bunch of stuff from the snack thing, drinking soda. I go to the Ramada Inn in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin that night, and I was 10 or 11 over. And I remember sitting there looking at myself in the mirror, and I was just like, the self-talk in the mirror, like, what did you do? I mean, I'm sure I was in tears. Like, what did you do? Long story short, 24 hours after that, I was on weight. That was a running, bike. I mean, it was just, but anyway, so Andy Hamilton of Track Wrestling does a little feature, which I think is the coolest little segment, but it's called My Greatest Loss. And I ended up losing in the state finals, up by 7 in the third period. Things came off the tracks, lost in overtime. And when I was reflecting on that loss, him in those stories, I brought up the Wheat Thin story. So it was my birthday a couple of months ago. Andy Hamilton and the crew at Sports Engine Track Wrestling, I was getting 6-7 boxes of Wheat Thins a day from Amazon for like 2 weeks straight. I got a ton of them. I got a box of the cracked pepper that I'm looking at right here. I got 2 boxes on my counter right now: cracked pepper and reduced fat. And I have a son who's 17 years old who lives with me. And he made a comment to Andy Hamilton on a video. He goes, "Andy, where's the tomato basil?" So the next day, I think we got 6 or 7 boxes of that. So yeah, we got Wheat Thins, proud supporter.
That's pretty good story. No, I tell you what, been listening to you for a long time. I've got several questions I kind of wrote down, but I'm sitting in a new place so I can have those Wheat Thins sitting in the background. I have my tablet over there.
You're a Twins fan? I know a lot of people in Dakotas are Twins fans.
Well, yes. It's a great thing. I tell you what, sports of any type, I've always been a proponent to be involved in all sports.
Absolutely.
This 12-month a year wrestling, even much as I love it, I can handle it as an adult, but I think as an athlete, a person, be a rounded person, they should be involved in lots of things. So
you know why that's such a great point? Here's something I've learned in my adult life, and I wish we started this rant, so I'm gonna finish it.
Definitely.
Wrestling's a great sport. I never wrestled in college. I wanted to wrestle in college. I have a son who's almost 25 years old. I was in college for about 2 weeks. Found out I was going to be a dad. That was the end of it. So I never wrestled in college. I never won a state title. I love this sport. It's my livelihood. I can tell you the benefits. I just know. I owe a ton to this sport based on life being hard, dealing with different things, mention the people I've met. It's fantastic. So I'm 99%. I'm in the 99% of everybody else, right? It's the 1% that are going to go out and wrestle in the Big Ten, and beyond that, probably less than 1%. So if you're a parent, like, I'm not saying you never tell your kid you can't do that. But if you're wrestling for the scholarship or this and that, you are going to be so disappointed, and you are going to really miss out. And being a kid, do all the fun. Play baseball, play football, find your passions. I'm with you. Unless you're in that 0.5%, 1%, which I hate to break it to 99.9 parents listening, your kid's not there.
Yeah. You're right. You're completely right.
Think big picture, because otherwise what happens is those kids, and we all know these people, they were really good wrestlers, really good. And guess what? They hated it. Mm-hmm. And then they grow up and they have kids of their own, and their kids don't do it. You know why? Because it sucked. It was a bad experience. So I'm with you. We're on the same page.
Yep. I like the experience part of it, where, for an example, I had an oldest son who is a sophomore in college, never did wrestle after 5th grade. But he had other things. He bear hugged a kid and he broke the kid's arm. And he said, "I'm not doing that to my best friend. I can't do this anymore." And then that spring, another friend asked him if he wanted to swim, and then became a multiple state champion swimmer.
Yeah, everybody's got their own path.
And then my youngest, he follows my path a little bit, loves baseball, loves football, loves all sports. And wrestling, sometimes I wonder, what am I doing? I'm putting him through hell, but he loves it too. But it's, and it's the pain of that parent in the stands. It's another thing you start learning some as a wrestling parent, that you also have to take the break to be a fan of your kid and the team you're on. And I think some people miss that out too, that it's just not about your kid when you're sitting in the stands. You got to get to know those parents. It's the best family ever you can be around.
My oldest son played basketball, and people will be like, "Man, your kid played." I mean, if he had $1 for every time he answered, "You don't wrestle?" And people are like, "Man," they look at me like, "Their kid doesn't wrestle. They only play basketball." And for me, I get my drink, get my popcorn, sit in the stands. I don't know what's going on. Awesome. It was always the same speech with my kid, no matter what. Hey, love watching you play. Fun watching you compete. You have a good time. Great. Let's go to Dairy Queen. Like, that's the conversation. That's it.
Nope. So true.
So I want to interrupt you real quick. Just to let you know, I want to get one thing straight before we go on. If baseball had rules like it did in 1991, Kent Herbeck doesn't get away with that, and the Atlanta Braves win.
My second team has always been the Atlanta Braves because I'm a Dale Murphy fan.
Oh, number 3, Dale Murphy. Man, one of the best center fielders ever. MVP, I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
I can go through that whole team, but we got a wrestling show to talk about. No. So I want to go back to your beginnings. Now, when did you start wrestling? That's kind of what and where at? Yeah,
March of 1983. I was 7 years old. I grew up in a town called Ripon, Wisconsin. 7,000 people, probably an hour and a half away from Milwaukee. East Central Wisconsin. And my dad had a friend that was a farmer named RD was his name, this little kid. And RD's brother, Fuzzy, was the heavyweight at Ripon High School. So my dad was a barber. He cut hair till 8 o'clock on Friday nights. And I just remember he would take us to watch Fuzzy wrestle. And I do not recall, I could be wrong, but I do not recall ever going to a wrestling practice. I went to a wrestling tournament in first grade and at Fond du Lac Goodrich High School. And little 4-man bracket. And the first kid I ever wrestled was a kid named Seth Pilot. And I found out very quick, Seth was a multiple-time, and he was a stud youth kid. And real good wrestler. I think he pinned me in 10 seconds. I don't remember. I can remember, for whatever reason, the ref telling me I'd have my foot on the line. Before I didn't have my foot on the line. I was standing straight up, did not have any clue. I really didn't know what I was doing there. So he pinned me in 10 seconds. I remember getting up and fighting back the tears a little bit. Like I understood something bad happened a little bit. And won the next match against a kid named Dan Wetzel. I think it was 4-2. I got a white ribbon for third place. And I always think back on that, like, number one, you could give me $100,000 for that ribbon and I wouldn't take it.
Yep.
Little did I could have never have imagined that March, that day in March of 1983, that would have changed my life forever. I would have never in a million years thought that, but that was the day it all began. And I just always loved it. I mean, for me, wrestling it's the individual aspect of it. I will be the first to admit that in many settings, I'm not a team player. I mean, I cannot imagine playing football. And having somebody like, Aaron Donald yesterday, he's the leader of the Rams and he's got a face mask getting a fight with somebody 15 yards. Are you kidding me? Like you are that undisciplined. I could not deal with that. And I'm proud to say when I was in high school, I never drank. I was disciplined. I was committed. I don't have any what ifs. I gave it all I had. And I've never understood why, especially at the college level, just my own opinion. If you're going to do that stuff in college, I wouldn't even waste my time. But that's just me. And a lot of that's probably because I wasn't good enough. Like I wasn't good enough to take shortcuts. So, yeah, I can't imagine relying on somebody else. Not my deal.
Every time I listen to you, I think a lot like you do. I remember every person I wrestled, name-wise, you name it, my first matches. I talk about guys in the room I wrestled, and I go back to like class reunions, and they said, Jon, just talk. Yes, because I remember like everything. I said I wasted my whole brain cell on every day of school, remembering 1st through 6th grade.
Yeah.
Knowing all my classmates' birthdays and what they did in every class. And they go, what in the world do you I said, I don't know why. I just remember that.
A great skill set. I mean, people ask if you could have anything, be invisible, be able to fly, this and that. If I could have any superpower, it'd be meeting somebody one time and remembering their name. It's a lethal weapon if you can do it.
Oh, that's crazy. Definitely. No, okay. So then you went after high school, you said you went to where in college, and then when did you get involved with track wrestling? Let's go to that spot.
Yeah, track wrestling. This would have been about 2000. Let's see here. 2000, November of 2007. I launched a website called BadgerStateWrestling.com. We were all Wisconsin, and I was on I can tell you exactly where I was. I was on College Avenue in Appleton, Wisconsin at a stop and go light. Probably shouldn't have been on my phone, but I called up Justin Tritz. I'd never met him. It's the first time I'd ever talked to him because I knew to get a business launched in Wisconsin that had anything to do with wrestling, Justin Tritz was the guy. He's just one of those guys. Tom McGarvey runs the Wisconsin Wrestling Forum, Wisconsin Wrestling Online website. I've known in this whole process that it really is, you got to connect dots. You got to network. You got to know people. Until you understand that, you're going to be probably spinning your wheel. And so that was 2007. And that's when I got a relationship with Justin Tritz. Then I was doing some interviews at Fargo. And if I would do anything USA related, Pete Isaias, the national director of events, real good friend of mine, awesome guy. He coached me there for a while. I love Pete. He would always room Justin and I together. So got a real good relationship with Justin, and Justin hired me then in must have been 2015. July of 2015. I owe Justin a ton. I can honestly tell you this. I probably trust Justin Tritz more than anybody else on this planet. You will not meet a better guy. He is the best. I take a bullet for that guy, no doubt. So he's been a very big, he's been a really good friend and a real big reason why I've been able to get to where I've gotten. Big reason. Pete Isaias, I could go on and on. There's so many people.
So what were you doing previous? Because I know you started the website, and then how about normal job, teaching wise?
I went to again. Long story short. I'll take you to. I was selling cars in 2000, 2001, and I always knew I wanted to be in broadcasting. That's all I wanted to do since I was 10 years old. There was never a plan B. That's what I wanted to do. So I sold cars from January through May in 2001, and I was the #1 salesman every month. I was the only guy. What I always liked was when you walked in the dealership, it had salesman of the month, and since it was January, I was the only name on the plaque. January, February, March, April, May, and I was very successful at it, and I didn't enjoy it. And I remember once I'm sitting outside, and heck, at that time, I'm 25 years old, had a house, driving a BMW. Life is pretty good. And I'll never forget sitting outside my car, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and I looked at myself. I'm like, you just sold 3 cars today. It was a Thursday. And I'm like, you sold 3 cars today, and you hate it. You hate this. I think the next day I got enrolled to radio school in Phoenix, Arizona. So I went out to that radio school for 6 months and just got so fortunate just getting some real big breaks. I mean, if you told me God doesn't exist, he doesn't exist, here's the proof. It's you can't believe it because here's all the proof. I would still tell you, no way. All my chips are center of the table. God does exist because there is no way in hell that these 20 things just happen to me coincidentally. It'd be I've gotten so fortunate. I've gotten so fortunate. There's been so many people that have helped me out. But then I got a radio job in Milwaukee in 2002, and then I got a radio job in Appleton up until 2007. I launched Badger State Wrestling in 2007, did that for 7 or 8 years. I could just see where the business was going. This business, high school sports, it's pretty big business. I was never in it for that, and I realized, I got to get out of this because I'm just not big enough and don't have the capital, whatever, and that's where I got in with Justin. So that's the sports talk show was a lot of fun. Did that out of Appleton, right by Green Bay. So that job was a lot of fun. And I'll never forget when Scott Cleaver runs the Cheesehead tournaments in Kaukauna, Wisconsin. So Scott's one of my good friends, and him and I would do a wrestling radio show in Wisconsin. We did that for a couple of years, had a lot of fun. And I remember talking to my station manager because getting that sports talk show job in Appleton, that was hard to do. I don't know how many people applied, probably over 100, a real hard job to get. And it was a lot of fun. But I'll never forget when I left and I told my station manager what I was doing. I will never forget. He goes, Shane, he goes, wait a minute. You're leaving this to do what? And I'm like, I'm starting this wrestling website up and this is going to work. I just knew it would. And it was a lot of work. And again, thank God, I was too dumb and did it. If I would have known, a year in what all goes into that, I don't know if I would have done it. I mean, it's like anything, any kind of business you run, it's stressful. I'm convinced that I'll live, God willing, I'll live to be, probably 60, and I'll be like 60, get up to heaven. God will be there. I'll be like 60, and he's gonna put his hand up and go, stop. He's gonna dig into his pocket, grab a notebook, find my name, and it's gonna say, and my real last name is not Sparks, by the way, but Shane Nebl. That's another story. But, he's gonna show my name, and it's gonna say Shane Nebl, 86. And then it's going to be crossed out in parentheses. It's going to say he was hell-bent on making that wrestling website work. And I'm going to cover that up for him because it definitely took years off my life. It was worth it. It was a lot of fun, but that was a stressor.
Well, I remember when track first started because they contacted all the state websites and trying to get into the states. And they actually offered me a deal to get them involved in all their tournaments. And I felt kind of guilty because they were willing to give me a ton of money. I'm talking half of the proceeds for that first year just to get them in.
Justin Fritz hustles.
And I basically emailed back and said, guess what? This sounds like the best thing possible. Because here's the crazy thing. I've never been into making money with Dakota Grappler. It's been a business of mine for 20 years, and I don't have anything from it, really. It's funny how it works. Well, maybe a little bit. But the whole thing is I wasn't looking to make money. I was there to promote the sport. And I believe that's part of my life is just to promote the sport. And I said, guess what? I will give you every contact. I'll get you into North Dakota, and don't pay me a cent because I want this to go. And I'm hoping more people took advantage of that because I think it was his approach. And I don't even remember who it was that contacted me. This must have been him.
Probably because Fritz. I'll bet it was.
Yep. And I said, okay, let's first get the first tournament in and let's see how they like it. And it was kids wrestling actually first. We started to get kids wrestling tournaments in first, and all they were getting back was $1 per wrestler. And that $1 per wrestler, you think of a tournament, you get 200-300 kids, or you get another tournament. But guess what? All of a sudden, if you start having 10 a weekend, that's making track wrestling actually profitable for that weekend, so they can actually hire somebody to keep this going and expand it and keep making it go. I tell you what, it was huge for the state of North Dakota. And then the High School Activities Association knew what was going on. And guess what? They adopted it in the rules because guess what? We pushed it as coaches. We really liked it. Yeah. And guess what? Then every coach went from there. And it has been just a great success. And I'm so happy they did do that because we needed it. We needed something like that.
I mean, Justin Tritz he's a visionary and he works so hard. And like I said before, he's just such an honest guy that his integrity is second. I've never met a guy with integrity like that guy, like ever. He's one of a kind. He's one of a kind, and just a great example of, going to work and just working.
But see, there were about 2 competing companies at that time. Other ones you can think about it a little bit. The Predicament kind of had a little bit. You remember going back to that? They had the scorebook, and then there was the wrestling. There was almost like something called the wrestling scorebook. And South Dakota took a long time to get them over to track, actually, because they were using the other system. Okay. Yep, some of that history-wise. Bill, I'll let you ask a couple questions. I don't want to dominate this.
Yeah, no, I'm just here to listen anyway. It's kind of fun. So, Shane, I want to talk about Big Ten Network, right? So you've been on the sidelines. You've been able to kind of get started in there. Talk about the start of that a little bit. Then I got a couple follow-ups.
Man, this is a pretty crazy story. So, gosh, I'm trying to think what year it would have been. I remember doing the PA at the Wisconsin Badgers. Corey Wallman's a North or South Dakota guy.
South Dakota. Yeah.
Yep. So Corey Wallman was an assistant coach with the Badgers with Bart Shelsvig. And Bart was a Webster City, Iowa guy, I believe, but obviously great career in college with Iowa under Gable. But those 2 guys were assistants. And somehow they got me in where I could do the PA for the Badgers. And when I did the PA for the Badgers, did that, and then I got to do some play-by-play for UWBadgers.com. And I remember being at the Big Ten tournaments. It was at Northwestern probably 11 years ago. It was going to be right in that mix. And I remember watching Tim Johnson, Jim Gibbons, and Lee Kemp. And I'll never forget it. I just remember looking and being like, in my mind, like, that's the goal. Like, that's That's the goal. I mean, the Big Ten Network was always my goal from the beginning. So then I got an opportunity to do the NCAA selection show. I think Pat Tossi did it in year 1, and then this was going to be year 2. So the Badgers let me take. I went with the team to Northwestern. Went with the bus with those guys, Pritzlaff and Barry Davis, just awesome guys. Wallman, Bart is great. So I did that selection show, and that was the first year then that they were going to do these. It was called live sports radio, and it was these little earpieces inside the arena. It was the first year they were going to do it. The timing of that, I got into that, and I got to do the semis, and Brian Hazard and I, who does a lot of PA work, Brian's out of Virginia. He does the NCAA Championships PA with Jason Bryant. We did the finals. And, I mean, I'm chasing the perfect broadcast. I texted Jaden Ironman today because in that broadcast on Friday, there's a lot going on, and I love every minute of it. But it's far more difficult than what people realize behind the scenes. Everything's timing. You got somebody in your ear. I mean, it's not that simple, okay? And if I'm being fully honest, another thing, I don't have a day of TV training in my life. So if I'm being a little honest, don't tell anybody this. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Okay? So there's a lot.
But you're a car salesman.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But in that match on Friday, in the open, I called Jaden Ironman Mike Ironman, his dad. So I'm like, and I knew right when I said it. And I'm like, Iowa wrestles Minnesota this Friday on Big Ten. And I'm sure I'll make it because I'm a big believer in like own your stuff. Like I'm not perfect. I screwed up. I know it's Jaden Ironman, but my brain didn't go with my mouth. But it still ticks me off. It's like, God dang, I was having some fun with Jaden today. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's like I just felt like an idiot. Blah blah blah. So. Anyways, I don't know where I got going on that. But so I'm doing this. So my point being is every broadcast I get over with, it's just like a wrestling match. You always just want to make little tweaks and just get a little bit better here, a little bit better there. Like it's a constant work in progress. That night in Philadelphia, it was Robles McDonough, Taylor Bubba Jenkins, John Reeder won a title that night. I think Jordan Oliver beat Hochstress from Boise State. It was that year. And I remember getting off of that broadcast thinking, man, that had definitely been the best I had done up to that point. Okay, so I remember feeling so good about it. Well, I go back to the hotel, and Jim Gibbons is in the lobby. And I remember having a self-taught conversation in my head. Walking up to my room going, here's the deal, Shane. You're coming back down here, and you're going to meet Jim Gibbons, and you are going to calm it down. Because I if you don't know, I need pretty
energized.
You know what I mean? So I went down, and I went up to the hotel room, put my bag away, came down, and introduced myself to Jim Gibbons and said, it's always been a goal of mine to, work with you on the Big Ten Network. So Jim and I are talking. We're having a conversation. And Quentin Wright walks by. And he won a title that night. And Quentin Wright, I don't remember the exact timing of it. But at the same time, the Scove brothers. One wrestled at Ohio State. One wrestled at Oklahoma State. I think it's Jude. I wish I remember the other. Is it Jude and Andrew maybe? Anyways, they come walking by. And they're and I'm talking to Quentin Wright. And I can hear these guys telling Jim Gibbons, we heard a guy tonight. You got to find him. We heard this guy tonight. He was great. You got to find this guy, Jim. And Jim Gibbons looks at me and goes, come over here. And he looks at the guys and he goes, this guy was one of those guys doing that. Start talking. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, that's the guy. That's the guy, Jim. This guy, blah, 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 blah. Next thing I know, Jim Gibbons goes, you want to go get something to eat? And you guys will appreciate this story because we're talking about this a little bit.
Oh, yes.
So Jim Gibbons, myself, and by this time, I got to be honest, the feeling of excitement in my body is, I'm like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, are you kidding me? This is unbelievable. So Jim Gibbons and I and another guy get in the car, and we go to a place called Pinky's Diner. I don't even know if it's still around. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I think we're there till like 3 in the morning. We're there talking wrestling and blah, blah, blah. And we're there with another guy who Jim introduced me to when we got in the car, and I can't remember his name, and I don't know who he is. But he's talking wrestling. Seems like you know what he's talking about. And tell him a few stories. So not that, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I asked Jim, I'm like, Jim, I've always wanted to ask you. Like, we're in the car that day when we go to Pinky's Diner. I'm like embarrassed to ask you, but like, who was that again? Randy Lewis.
Randy Lewis.
And Jim and Randy are real good friends. We go with Randy. I mean, one of my favorite, a couple of years ago, snowstorm in Iowa City. It's me, Jim, Randy, my girlfriend at the time at a Perkins at 4 in the morning in Coralville, Iowa. But the timing, again, getting back to the timing, Big Ten Network at that time was like looking for a mat side guy. Doug Brooker was the guy from the old Iowa Public Television and Big Ten Network. They gave me an opportunity. It worked out, did the mat side for a number of years. And now, like the last 5 years, they've continued to, give me more play-by-play gigs. But that's how the Big Ten Network started. I mean,
that's awesome.
Again, just being, right place, right time, and rest is history.
Well, I tell you what, I'm a little jealous. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I want to. The timing of it was, you can't make this stuff up.
No. So I want to rack your brain a little bit. You've interviewed a lot of guys, in a lot of events. I'm going to throw you some names out. Give me some impressions on a few of these. Mark Hall.
Very polite, pretty quiet, well-spoken guy. When I think of Mark Hall, I just think about a guy that's just polite. Unbelievable career. I'm looking forward to watching him at the Olympic trials.
Yeah, me too.
He pulled out the recorder when he won it at Big Tens in Minneapolis. And I saw something kind of cool today on Twitter in the last day or two. Somebody made a comment on Twitter that James Green had been beaten by Yanni Diakomahalis, and he wasn't sure if anybody ever did that. And Mark Hall, I believe it was Mark Hall on his Twitter, said, yeah, Dylan Ness did also, but people losing this, no big deal, bro. And I think that's one thing with this sport, too, that I think the best guys, they're willing to put it on the line. They give their best effort. And not that losing doesn't sting, but I remember when Isaiah Martinez got beat by Vincenzo Joseph when he was going for his 3rd title, and he had a great tweet. And he said, very few get out of this game unscathed.
Yep.
Like, that's the truth. Like, you lose, whatever. Right?
I know when I saw that tweet from Mark Hall today, I thought the same thing. I think a lot of us as fans take these losses harder than the guys in the arena do.
No question. No question they do. Fans, short for fanatic. Yeah. Yep. And the reality is losing, there's a lot of value in losing.
That's right.
Really is.
Well, I watched some of the tweets after the Taylor Burroughs match, and I thought his wife took it worse than he did. That was part of it. A 4-4 loss. And I thought it was the end of the world.
It happens. You get better. I just appreciate the guys that put it on the line. That's what it's about. Again, the big picture stuff. It's fantastic.
That brings up the next one I want to ask you about, Dylan Ness.
Man, Dylan was. I remember watching Dylan when he was in high school. He was, he was a stud in high school, and I remember one time Dylan made me feel pretty cool. We were doing Minnesota, Iowa. I don't remember the year, but Dylan Ness was wrestling for Minnesota, and he saw me and he goes, "You're the guy with Banner State Wrestling, right?" And that just kind of made me feel. I was like, "Damn, yeah, it's cool." Yeah. So Dylan Ness, from a wrestling standpoint. Jim Gibbons made the comment. I copied him, and I think I've probably gotten the credit for it. It should really go to Jim. But Dylan Ness, and I dropped the line. Yeah, I dropped Dylan's name in the broadcast the other day. I don't remember who we were watching, but Dylan Ness, it might have been Caleb Young. It was Caleb Young. Dylan Ness, you're riding Dylan Ness. Next thing you know, you're on your back against Dylan Ness. So we'd always call him highly combustible material. Handle with extreme care. And that was Dylan Ness. He's just one of those guys, when you're riding him, like, you're in trouble, and you could always see it. A lot of guys would want to ride him because, like, freaking next thing you know, you're on your back. Dylan Ness was exciting. He was just exciting to watch.
Yep, always. Here's one, Sammy Brooks.
You can't win a Big Ten title in a day. You can't throw a great mullet in a day. That was Sammy and I will forever be linked because of that Big Ten interview with the mullet. I remember I've known his dad Charlie for quite some time and watched out of Oak Park River Forest. That's where Sammy went. I remember watching him. He was a hammer in high school. But when we did that interview, I said to him, because I'm a big believer in. I mean, I tell you, I talked about play-by-play being difficult. It's 10 times easier than doing interviews. Doing interviews is difficult. Because I could go, this is a whole hour-long conversation within itself, but I prefer doing interviews when I can be with the guy for a minute. Just give me a minute. Do I like doing interviews with people right off a mat? I don't. And the reason being is because, number one, they're exhausted. I mean, these guys, you win a Big Ten title, you're exhausted when you come off the mat, okay? Or anybody for that matter. You're tired, and you want to ask them a question, and you want it to be a quote-unquote good question, but you don't want a guy to have to think that hard. He's tired. His mind's tired, okay? It's a real fine line there. But if you can get a guy for a couple of minutes, it's amazing the rapport you can build with somebody in 1 minute. It really, if I can get a minute with the guy, I'm in pretty good shape. Because there you might just be like, hey, nice job, great. You get small talk, and he might say like, yeah, it felt really good. My grandma's here, and whatever it is. Like I said, it's like, oh, you could have something like, hey, it was a big win for you. You talked about your grandmother. You speak about that. Couldn't go to. You have something, okay? So with at that Big Ten championships, we would do the interviews with the champion during the next weight class between periods 1 and 2. I got like 2 minutes with these kids. So, and I'm not a big, I don't want to ask you a question that stuns you. All right. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to ask you. Like, hey, what do you think about this and this? So I don't remember what I asked Sammy, but he gave no indication. He's just like, yeah, okay. So I'm like, that worked for you? Yeah, okay, great. So he goes into the mullet stuff. I was like, yeah, Sammy, I don't know where we go from there, but let's go in the direction of trust. That must have been one of the questions, was just trusting himself at that time. So Sammy was great, and now every time I see him, one thing that is a lot of fun is it is what it is. But one great example is Bobby Telford from Iowa. Bobby Telford, and quite frankly, a lot of those guys on Iowa's team at that time, it was like, they had to go beat their heads in the back for 20 minutes. And I hate that. That's just me. I'm a big believer in marketing the sport. And you look at all the great sports, what happens? They market stars. I'll tell you, I'm getting all over the place here, but tell you a good Spencer Lee story also. But, so Telford at that time was like, he didn't interview or whatever. A lot of these Iowa guys, they wouldn't do the interviews because, they had to go. I just wasn't impressed. I understand you're, so tough and you got to go, do a bunch of this and that. It just turned me off. But all these guys now, when I see them, Telford's great. Bobby Telford's an awesome guy. Now, I've had a few conversations with him on the phone. I was in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club Showdown doing stuff with him. He's awesome. Sammy Brooks, every time I see him, he's great. It's Matt McDonough is still one of my all-time favorites. First time I ever interviewed Matt McDonough, it was the first interview I ever did on Big Ten Network. It was at the Midlands about 10 years ago. He was wrestling, what was his name? Gerard Garnett, I believe it was, out of Virginia Tech. I think he was the assistant coach with Roger for a little bit there at NDSU.
Right, yep.
So, again, my belief is humble yourself. You don't have to be this big, bad, hey, if you screw up with Jaden Ironman, I messed up. I screwed up. I felt like an idiot. I messed up. And I'm sure there's people at home we call him Jaden. God, God, how do you get that wrong? It's whatever. You just own stuff. So I went up to McDonough before that, and I said, hey, Matt, just want to introduce myself. Shane Sparks. It's my first time on the Big Ten Network tonight. I'd love to do an interview with you if you win. And if you could help me out, I'd really appreciate it. McDonough pins him. We do an interview on Big Ten Network, and I'm driving home. Gibbons and Brooker are in the same vehicle driving back. They call me up. They're like, we don't know what you said to him, but he's never talked like that. I'm like, yeah, I told him I needed some help. Like, I didn't try to figure it out myself. It's like, I need some help on this. So he was great. And Matt McDonough and I stay in touch. It's cool. It's probably like teachers or coaches at any level. When they get older, it's just it's a different relationship. And I really enjoy. I wish these guys were maybe a little bit more talkative in their college days, but I get it. I get it. But it's a lot of fun getting to talk to these guys after they're out, and it's just a different relationship. I really enjoy it. But Spencer Lee's wrestling Minnesota. This is probably if somebody asked me, like, what was the coolest thing? Because you got to be able to read a room. Okay, I mean, you got to be able to figure out the temperature of the room. So Spencer Lee's wrestling Sean Russell at the Pavilion, and it's like he beats Sean Russell like 6-1 or 7-1. He beats him by like 6 points. Sean Russell's pretty darn good, but Spencer Lee comes off, I believe, the week before he got beat at the Midlands, if I remember right. Yeah, he did. He did get beat at the Midlands. So I walk over to him, and I can tell, like, him and Tom are getting into it a little bit. So I just kind of walk over there because, again, I want the stars. People want to hear from Spencer Lee, okay? And I kind of walk over there, and I'm just kind of looking around, and Terry Brands is looking at me, kind of giving me one of these looks where he's just kind of like, nah, this isn't going to work. And Spencer Lee, like, sees me or something, and he's like, oh, no. And he says, he's like, does Shane want to do an interview? Because if he does, I'm doing it. He's like, this guy's great for the sport, and I'm doing an interview with him. And I'm just kind of like, holy balls. Like, I mean, I'm like 40 years, probably at the time 42 years old. And I'm like, I'll be the first to admit it. There's a little fanboy in me. I mean, I love it. I'm a big wrestling fan. So I'm just kind of like, oh my God, Spencer Lee, like, went out of his way to do this interview. And I remember we were over there getting ready to go on. And I'm like, yeah, Spencer, can I ask you this? And he just smiled at me and goes, Shane, I'll be real honest. If you ask me that question, I can't give you an honest answer on air. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Can I ask you this? Yeah, great. Ask me that. So I just really appreciate. I'll give you a line. Can I drop a little bit of I'll clean this up a little bit. This is a Shane Sparks original, okay? And I swear by this line. Jordan Burroughs, Spencer Lee, Kyle Snyder, Bo Nickel, Colin Moore. I could give you a ton. The reality is 90% of the guys in this sport apply this principle in their attitude and approach. You can be a complete ass kicker without being an a-hole.
Yep.
Like, I like those guys. Like, Zane Rutherford, Jason Nolf. These guys, they will kill you. They will destroy any bit of hope you have inside of a wrestling mat, right? On a wrestling mat. But when they get off, gracious, polite, kind. Like, I love that. I just love, because I just think that's how you build cultures. Like, but with those kind of people that are just really selfless.
Yeah, you bring up one there, Jason Nolf. I remember to this day watching after he wrestled Imar at Illinois, true redshirt freshman, I guess, pins Imar, and he comes off the mat, and you expect he's gonna be bouncing off the walls, but you get him, and what happens then? Well,
that was one of the biggest lessons I ever learned. So I have an idea of who we're going to interview. And of course, Isaiah Martinez is a star, so we're going to interview him, and of course he's going to win. Like, we all know that. So we go there that day, and we are going to do a halftime interview with Isaiah Martinez, some kind of feature with Isaiah Martinez for intermission. Awesome. So Isaiah Martinez and I really like Imar. We do some interview. They got the lights set up, and it's going to be this real good interview. And I generally speaking, it's just kind of my style. Again, it gets back to how difficult interviewing is. Maybe I'm just not good enough to get, it's so difficult. So I have like a little bit more of I don't know if I'd call it mechanical, but it's not overly conversational, in all honesty. If I'm going to interview somebody for a few questions, it's pretty much like, I want to get this, this, and this. So I usually go in, like, if I'm doing the Big Ten championships, I probably have 25 questions that I know I'm going to use, and then I'll just kind of adjust those in certain ways depending on who it is. So that particular day, I had a few questions for Imar. I knew what I was going to ask him. And I didn't. Why would I deviate from that and think about any interview questions for this other kid? There's no reason to. I don't need to. And I will never forget. He pins, and this is also when I learned my own lesson, and I also knew at that moment that Jason Nolf was going to be special. So Jason Nolf comes over, and I, again, very honest. Jason, I'm going to be real honest with you right now. I don't know what I'm going to ask you because I didn't think you were going to win. I mean, and he looks at me dead serious, and I will never forget. I could have Alzheimer's at 90, and I'll remember this. He looks at me dead serious, and he goes, yeah, I know I was going to win. And I was like, holy balls. So I think that was the question I asked him. I might have, and I don't remember, but it was probably something like, Jason, you didn't have any doubt about this match. That might have been the question. But I don't think I don't recall any other times where I wasn't ready for whoever won coming off. That was a real, I remember being panicked. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do here? So that was a good lesson for me. But Nolf was just, and he's another kid, pretty quiet. But I was doing a match, Michigan and Penn State, I think it was 2 years ago, and I got a tap on my shoulder, and it's Jason Nolf just saying hi to me. And I was like, holy Christ, at the end of the day, whether it's coaches, athletes, I just hope they respect me and understand that I give a max effort. I mean, I give a max effort, and I love the relationship. So I appreciate it. The older I get, those are the things you appreciate. People that say, hi, how you doing? I like that stuff.
I could go on for a long time, but I got to get one coach in.
Okay.
Barry Davis.
Okay. You got an hour?
I do.
I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you this as quick as I can. I don't know if what I think of a couple coaches that care for their athletes maybe more than anybody else. The two names that come to mind for me, and there's a lot of them, don't get me wrong. But if somebody asked me, if I was on Family Feud and somebody asked me a question, I had 2 seconds, just give you a bang, bang. I'd say Barry Davis, Mark Manning. Those two guys love their guys. They love them. So Barry Davis, going back to Philadelphia, that year that I was my first broadcast at the NCAA championships, we didn't get paid for that, or we didn't get our hotel paid. I know that. Barry Davis lets me stay with him. I mean, they had 3 of the semis that year, but Barry Davis, it's me in the hotel room with Barry Davis. That's who I stayed with, Barry. I remember that when we got there on a Wednesday, I remember there was a homeless guy, and he wanted some money, and Barry grabbed him. We went into Quiznos Subs together. I remember that. Barry would always call me and tell me to bring it'd be 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. I'd be I was running Badger State Wrestling. I'd be riding home. It'd be 10:30 at night. It'd be Barry. Hey, Barry. Yeah, Shane, I just want to call and make sure you're bringing your son tomorrow. Yeah, that's good for you guys. Are you bringing him? Are you bringing him? Yeah, I'll bring him. I went through a divorce about 8 years ago. Barry would always call, see how I was doing. I take a bullet for Barry Davis. And the biggest compliment I can give him, and this is, if you really stop and think about this, this is a very crazy thing I'm going to say here. And it just speaks to the unbelievable human being this guy is. Barry Davis was about as big of a butt kicker on a wrestling mat as you're going to find. I mean, we're talking about one of the all-time greats. I mean, winningest wrestler, I believe, at Iowa. 3-time national champ, Olympic silver medalist. The guy's done it all. When even in this conversation, true story, you bring up Barry Davis's name, I do not ever think about Barry Davis, the wrestler, ever. His wrestling means nothing to me, honestly. It used to. When I first met him, it was like, oh my God, cannot believe him. Because Barry and I once, we've driven to a couple events, just him and I. So I've spent plenty of time with Barry, hours at a time, just him and I. And in the beginning, it was oh my God, I cannot believe I'm in this car with Barry Davis. Are you kidding me? And now I would never give his wrestling accolades a thought. I would simply be yeah, Barry Davis is one of the best people you'll ever meet in this sport. And I'll never forget that night. It was a Friday night. Semifinals got over. Graf got beat. Howe got beat. Granville got beat. I got to go back to this hotel room in Philadelphia, and I know Barry's in the room. And it's like, what the hell am I going to say to him, right? I'm just praying to God he's like sleeping, okay? I will never forget this. I walk in there, sneak in, open the door, lights are off, Barry's sleeping. You know how hotel doors are pretty heavy, okay? I mean, I closed that thing. I'm tiptoeing to the bed. All of a sudden, I'm getting ready to get in the bed, and I hear, can't get him I hear, can't let him get to the legs. He turns the light on, and I'm like, just like, sorry, Barry. He's like, can't let him get to the legs like that. It was
live it down. Yeah.
He's just an awesome guy. He's an awesome human being. I mean, honestly, I could give you 100 awesome people I've met in this sport. He's going to be near the top of that list. Again, one of those guys where it's like, if you look at what Barry Davis has accomplished, if Barry Davis can be nice to you, or Barry Davis can be nice to everybody, then everybody else probably should fall in line, right? Jordan Burroughs, Kyle Snyder, Yanni Diakomahala, Spencer Lee, like some of these guys that are the best. They're the best. If the best guy is nice, then everybody else sure the hell better fall in line. And that's what I love about when because their culture changes in those rooms, and it goes to high school too. I mean, was talking to Andy Hamilton's going to be doing something on track wrestling pretty soon called it's like a grow wrestling thing, and Andy Hamilton, phenomenal guy, great respect for him and the amazing work he does. And I can't wait to see this piece. It's going to be awesome on track wrestling. But he talked about a story, Sammy Sasso. So Sammy Sasso pinned Michael Carr today from Illinois, who's I think a really good too. But trying to think where Sammy went. Did he go to Nazareth or like?
Yes, Nazareth. Yep.
Nazareth.
Yep.
So Nazareth, he's at Nazareth, and the coach at Nazareth, and I don't know his name. I wish I did, and I need to find this out. But he had something where every day they spotlight a kid in like the final couple minutes of practice. You bring up a kid, and he brings up Sammy Sasso. And he goes around the room to every guy in the team and asks the kid, asks them like, give us something you like about Sammy Sasso, positive culture deal. And they get to some freshman on the team. He's a freshman. I don't know what kind of contributor he was, but probably pretty low on the totem pole. And here you got Sammy Sasso, one of the best kids in the country. And it gets that kid, and he says about Sammy Sasso, I like Sammy because he says hi to me anytime he sees me in the hallway. Bam! That's the kind of stuff that stuff fires me up, because that's culture. That's what this sport should be about. That's how you do it. And that kid, when I see Sammy Sasso, I haven't seen him in person since the Big Tens, I'm going to give him a big high five and be like, that's why you're the man. You're a great wrestler, but let me tell you why you're the man, because this is how you treat people. I love that. That's my favorite story. I love that story. I never get sick of telling it.
Yeah, great story.
No, that is awesome. No, I sit down to the state wrestling tournament usually with all the older coaches, and there's like a mid-afternoon 2-hour break where some of the wrestling fans are going across to like the Buffalo Wild Wings or some other place to get an adult beverage. And I'll go down and sit on the floor with the coaches that got to hang out with their kids, or the ones that put on their wrestling shoes and go out and wrestle with some kids who are probably warming up to get into a placing match or doing something like that. And honestly, just listen. And that's my favorite part of the state wrestling tournament, is trying to absorb something from some of the coaches and just sit with them. And the relationships you build, it's life-changing, because those coaches understand. I think they see the big picture. The young coaches, I wish the young coaches would do this a little more, is just listen, because the older coaches know it took a lot for them to get there, but they're willing to give that secret to somebody else. And people don't realize that secret is not such a secret. It's being involved and being committed and being loved by your athletes, like the Barry Davises, like these other coaches. And I tell you what, that's probably my most favorite part of wrestling, is now those Saturdays when there's no wrestling going on.
I'll give you another great thing that always gets me. I do the Wisconsin State tournament, and it literally chokes me up every year. It's just every time it happens, I like tell myself like, keep it together, but it's just so powerful. like I said before, most of us wrestle in high school, even if you're a state place winner, that's probably the end of the road. That's just the reality. That's how it is. And what I always love is final match for a senior, win or lose. Mm-hmm. When he goes over and that embrace it in the corner with the coach, that stuff is priceless because it's just a special time. I mean, and every time I watch it, I just think like, man, it's like just a cool deal. That always gets me choked up watching that because if you're in this sport, you understand the relationships, the time, the sacrifice, the love. I think it's one thing too. I mean, I love tough. So I love about this sport. I love it. But I also love the love. I also love like my youth wrestling coach is a guy named Herm Leitz. Herm Leitz lives in Ripon, Wisconsin right now. Ron Milogic, John Kennedy, a couple of my high school coaches at Ripon High School. Like these, I haven't wrestled for Herm Leitz in, coming up on 40 years. Herm's one of my guys. Like I love Herm. I mean, Herm is, and I try to remind him, I see Herm at the state tournament every year in Ripon, along with my 5th grade teacher, a guy named Don Greger, who's one of the biggest influences of my life. And now that I've gotten older, I make sure every time I see those guys, every time. And I usually get choked up. I look at them, I'm like, I just want you guys to know how much I love you, what you guys have done for me. And I always tell them, and it's the truth. If it wasn't for you two guys, amongst countless others, I'd never be sitting here. I'd never be standing here. So I just love it all goes back to the people. It always does.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a question. So I told you I coached in Superior, Wisconsin, and there was a state champ heavyweight that came out of Superior, Nico. So and what made me think of that now was that his coach, Bill Getty at the time, was the head coach at Superior when I was there and a long time coach. I think he just got his jacket for 50 years of coaching in the state of Wisconsin. So that would have been a moment I would have liked to have been at. When Nico wins that state title and Coach Getty's right there.
Yep.
So that would have been a big one.
He grabbed him. I remember Nico grabbing him and spinning him around or whatever. Yeah, Nico's a great guy. I remember Nico in high school. He always wanted to be in WWE. That was his goal.
And he is.
Now he is. It's awesome. But that was a cool moment. I remember calling that match.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are cool times. You don't get many of those moments in your life. You really don't.
No. There wasn't a lot of state champions coming out of Superior, so that was a big one for Coach Getty.
Absolutely.
We still talk quite a bit, and we had a lot of fun times running around the state. But that's that would have been a great one for me to be at. Yeah,
that was fun.
Well, I tell you what, I get to call the state wrestling tournament too, both the dual and individual, and I'm trying to squeeze Bill in this year. Bill's been with me for a while, and I'd love to get him live in some of the Class B matches. So that's kind of my goal now, is to get Bill to do some live commentary stuff.
Yeah,
that's the next step. Because I tell you what, you build relationships there too. Our TV time is kind of different with COVID this year. It's going to be really challenging. So I tell you what, we got some demographics to do. North Dakota's still having a state wrestling tournament, but they're letting everybody qualify. And not only that, and they're going to separate, there's 2 classes in North Dakota, and they're going to separate the Class A and the Class B, the 2 classes, to 2 different times. And basically they're going to put 2 sessions in the morning, the A will go, and then they're going to shuffle them out and put the B in, which they've always wrestled them at the same time. And they think they might want to shuffle the fans out too. So I
think they will. They are going to shuffle the fans out. So if you buy a ticket for B, you're there for the B, and then you get shuffled out, and you'll have to buy another ticket for the A. But that won't be easy to do because you'll have to do that through your school. They're going to sell no tickets at the door.
No tickets at the door, and so I get Bill in so Bill can see the whole thing. With my media pass.
Is that inside the Fargo Dome?
It is in the Fargo Dome. Yep.
It is. What a great place that is.
That's a great venue. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of great matches have been wrestled inside those walls. That's for sure.
Oh, for sure. No, now if you had to pick one of your number 1 matches you've got to call, do you have a top 5 list of matches that you've got to call?
Man, that's a really good question. Obviously, the first match I ever did play-by-play will always be pretty cool. But that was Penn State, Minnesota. Dylan Ness pinned one of the Altons. That one I remember. I remember that one. What are some other? I'll give you another one. I was just doing mat side stuff, but it was a match I'll always remember. Minnesota wrestled Iowa one year. This duel was the craziest duel I've ever seen. Sam Brancale pinned Gilman. Ness, I think, beat St. John. I think Telfer beat Nelson. It was just a crazy duel. And I don't remember even who won it. I think, God, I don't remember who won it. I'm gonna say Minnesota probably won it. But it was probably Storley and Evans were in that match. But that was just a match that was just odd. Like it was just all over the place. I remember Tony Ramos pinning, I think it was Jimmy Gulabon once inside Carver. Place went nuts. When Penn State wrestled Ohio State at Penn State a couple years ago, probably 3 years ago already, Ohio State was ranked number 1, and they were going to beat Penn State, and they didn't. Penn State just, throwing some of that magic once again. That one comes to mind. Big Ten championships. I probably remember. I could probably talk about every one of those if we went year by year. Those are really cool. Every one of them. It's just Big Ten wrestling. And this is, I remember being a little kid visualizing doing this. And I remember I told the story on a podcast I was on with somebody a couple weeks ago, but I was probably, it was in 1987. I would have been 11. Went to a Wednesday afternoon Brewer game, Tigers and Brewers. Brewers won 14-2. I remember that. But I remember before we went in, I was staring at County Stadium. I just remember staring at it and my mom asking me what I was doing. She goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just picturing what it would be like to work here someday as a broadcaster. I've never quite made the major leagues in baseball. But one thing I always like to do is anytime I go into a venue, like I can tell you this, if I'm in Coralville, Iowa at a hotel and I'm driving to Carver Hawkeye, from that hotel to Carver Hawkeye Arena, I'm listening to AC/DC because it makes me feel like I'm competing. But anytime I get to those venues, I park and I just like an 11-year-old kid, every time I stare at it and just really thank God that I get to live my dream, because those are things like you think about when you're younger, like, I really want to do this and this is what I'm going to do. But to get to do it, I never forget how fortunate I am. I can tell you that because I'm smart enough to know this. There's a lot of people I can do it. If I don't do it anymore, the show goes on. Like, get over yourself, right? Nobody's that important. I like to look at it not necessarily that nobody's that important, just everybody's that important.
Right.
But, the show goes on. You enjoy the ride. It's kind of like when you're a little kid at the carnival and you get on the tilt-a-whirl. It's a lot of fun, and you don't know when the guy's going to turn the ride off. So you just enjoy it as long as you can, and then when it's time to get off, it's time to get off, and that's just the way it goes. But it is one hell of a fun ride. I can tell you that.
Appreciate it. Well, you got it. That's awesome.
Absolutely. We're all on borrowed time.
Okay. Well, good deal. Well, Bill, you got some other big questions because we're sitting at that hour.
Yeah, no, I think obviously we could go on forever, so we better not. But I know you've got a list of questions you got there, quick fire questions you'd like to ask.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to throw some quick fire questions we do at the end of the show just to get some personality things for you.
Okay.
And they'll pop up on the bottom too, pretty easy.
Okay.
But so let's go here. Here comes some quick fire questions. Okay. Here's the first question right here. Gatorade or Powerade?
Gatorade.
Any flavor?
Man, I'd probably go yellow, whatever that is. Lime?
Yeah. Give me the yellow Gatorade. Yes.
Oh, I don't know if you know me. With this question. You know anything about me and dilly bars?
Nope.
I got 25 of them out in my freezer right now. I absolutely love dilly bars. I love dilly bars. Dilly bars is my favorite thing on this planet.
Do you eat the chocolate off first? Or do you take bites straight off?
I bite the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah, I love dilly bars. Someday when I get to the Dakotas, we'll talk some wrestling, and I'll bring a couple bags of dillies.
Well, I go to Fargo every year. I'm all over the place.
Oh, they're the best.
I will catch you again. Okay. Mama's boy or rebel?
Man, I've made if you buy the book Bad Decisions, I wrote the foreword on it. I've made plenty of bad decisions. I've just done some stupid. I mean, if I'm being honest, I've just done some. Made my fair share of bad decisions. But at the end of the day, I talked to my mom when I was on my Peloton before I got in this interview for I think 47 minutes. My mom is the greatest human being on the planet. I definitely wouldn't be here without her support, unconditional love. So I'd probably say mama's boy. Like my mom, my mom's one of those, like, she's in the circle and nobody's going to take her off the throne.
What's funny, most wrestlers feel they want to be the rebel, but they're the mama's boy.
Yeah. My mom is, she's spectacular.
Okay. Are you fast-paced or consistently slow? I'm pretty sure I can guess this one.
You know what, though? You'd be surprised by this. I think it's probably the biggest misconception about me. I like to sit back and be consistently slow as much as anybody else does. I mean, I have a lot of high energy, and I'm fast-paced a lot. But when I'm done talking to you guys, I'll go sit on that couch and watch football for a couple hours, probably. And then watch. I'm watching this show right now called Suits. Great show.
Oh yeah.
I'm watching that on Prime. I'll probably watch a couple episodes of that. So I definitely got a slow pace side as well.
Okay. Were you a physical athlete or mental athlete?
Oh man, this one pains me to be honest with this. It was definitely physical. And wow, did I miss the boat. I wish I would have been far more mentally in tune.
That's usually the biggest 2020 question. People looking back wish they had the vision of being a more mental athlete. That's why they want to have their athletes that way.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Another one. Favorite holiday?
Man, I'd probably go with Easter. Christ is risen. You can't do much better than that.
Okay. Awesome. Next one.
Or Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's a good one too.
It might be a tough one. A Dan Gable or Cale Sanderson?
Yeah, this one is a tough one, but again, I'm not going to answer this one head on. It's Dan Gable. Again, I got a little quick story if you got time for
we got time. We don't give up here.
when I left the radio station to go to Badger State Wrestling, the first interview I was going to do was going to be with Dan Gable. And I didn't know him at that time. So I was going to do the interview, and I was in Appleton, Wisconsin, driving to Oshkosh, where I currently live and lived then. And my phone went off, and it was a number I didn't recognize. Hello, Shane speaking. Hey, Shane, this is Dan Gable. And I just want to confirm that we're still on for this afternoon at 4 o'clock or whatever it was. And I hung up the phone, and it was at that moment when I knew I made the right call. Mm-hmm. I got Dan Gable calling me to confirm an interview. This guy has no idea who I am, nor should he. He doesn't owe me anything. And he called me up to confirm something? Wow. So then I call him up, we're going to do the interview. And I've gotten to know Dan. I've spent quite a bit of time with him now since, last 10 years too. So I get to my house in Oshkosh and I call him, come up, we're going to do the interview. His wife, Kathy, answers the phone. Yeah, Dan's expecting your call. Give us a minute here to make sure that we have our call waiting turned off so nobody interrupts you. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me here? Like, again, I go back to, like, how do people make you feel? I mean, Dan Gable made me feel like I was bigger deal than he was. That's crazy, right? Like, that's incredible. So that's an unbelievable skill. So, or, just an attitude. So anyways, I'm very prepared. I talked about that Nolf deal before with the preparation. I learned I learned something here on details. So I have all these notes written out for an interview. I'm always, pretty well prepared in my intro, and I don't have all the stats right, but you'll get the point. I'm like, BadgerStateWrestling.com, our next guest, 2-time high school state champion, 100 and whatever and one, Olympic gold medalist, unscored upon. As a coach, he's this. He's simply known as Gable. That's my intro. And Dan Gable goes, wow, what an intro. I'm in my basement. Nobody can see me because it's audio only, and I am in my basement going like this. I knocked that freaking ball 600 feet out of the park. And then I looked down and realized I didn't hit record.
Oh,
No.
And there was no way in hell I was going to have him redo it. So when I did the interview in post-production, it was, blah, 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 blah. I did all the same thing. He's simply known as Gable, and we bring in the head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then I go into my first question. Nobody ever hears the, wow, what an intro. It was the coolest. So I told him that story a few times, but it was at that moment when I learned details.
Yep.
That is good. Well, I tell you a quick story. Now, mine's only going to be quite a bit shorter. So this weekend, got a hold of Terry Steiner, a good friend of mine, as we graduated together and talked forever. And he's been on the show several times. But
he's a great guy.
I asked him, what are the possibilities I could get Dan Gable's contact information? Because I'd really like to get him on the show. And so I told then Jim Makovsky and Bill that I'm going to try to get his information. And so then, and Terry is out of the country right now.
He's in France.
He's in France.
Yeah, yep.
And it wasn't like 10 minutes later, he had texted me back, and it's probably 4 a.m. over there, and he gave me his information. So then Saturday, my goal was to get a hold of Dan Gable. That was my whole goal. So I don't know how to approach this because he doesn't know me from nobody. And you're kind of scared, but yet this is one of those in my mind, because I've been an Iowa fan forever. It's like a bucket list moment for me.
Yeah.
So I text him, and I haven't got a response back yet. So I'm almost like disappointed in myself now. Did I say something wrong? I mentioned who I was, and I hope you don't mind that Terry Steiner got me your information. I just would like to contact you to see if I could set you up for a show like this. And so he has not got back to me yet. So I'm going, oh no.
Try him again. I would try him again, because I know, like right now or during I think they spent some time in Florida. I'm almost positive they do. But
okay.
I can't say enough good about him. So keep on him.
Oh, I will.
He's great too. He's great.
I've got 2 more I sent to, and one is Brock Lesnar, who is a South Dakota boy who I'd like to interview. But here, his freshman roommate in college, he went to Bismarck State actually first.
Yeah.
And his freshman roommate's a decent friend of mine. So I now got his contact information. But whole thing is after I got his contact information, it wasn't 5 seconds later, he said, but you can't use that because he tells nobody to contact you.
Oh, yeah. Brock, I remember I've met Brock twice. The first time I met him was Logan Storley. I think Logan Storley wrestled as a true freshman, correct?
Yep.
That is correct.
They awarded him the Junior Dan Hodge Trophy in a duel. I don't remember who Minnesota was wrestling, but Brock Lesnar was there because they're from the same hometown, I believe. Right?
No.
They're not?
No.
Yeah, they're both from Webster, I think.
Yeah, Webster, South Dakota. Correct.
Yeah. Yep. So I met Brock there. I think I met him, but I don't remember. I don't remember if we interviewed him at all. But then last year, Wisconsin was wrestling Minnesota, early season duel in the Big Ten. He was there, and they were there to celebrate. Man, maybe it was his 20th year of his national title, perhaps. They brought him in to celebrate something. And I remember shaking his hand thinking, I cannot imagine getting punched by this. My hands are, I'm not that big of a guy, but my hands are that little. His hands are humongous. Like, I just remember when he shook my hand, I was like, oh my God. Like, can you imagine getting punched by that? That was the first thing I thought. And I remember I had to sell him. Because I'm like, Brock, he's like, because he's a pretty humble guy. He's like, I just don't want this to be about me. And I said, Brock, I said, God, what did I say to him? I'm like, 2 questions. I'm like, 2 questions. I'm going to ask you about wrestling for that team. Like I remember positioning it like 2 questions, and we'll talk about the influence of this program. Like it won't be about you. It'll be more team oriented. And if I remember right, he looked at me, he goes, 2 questions. And I'm like, it's very nice. But I remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, that's the deal. Don't try to be the big hero here and ask him. Right. Like, if that's what he said, that's what you do. And he was very gracious. He was awesome. And I still can't imagine getting punched by that guy.
No.
Well, I go back. I've wrestled him. Back.
Are you serious?
Oh, yes. See, I coached at Valley City State University. And they had at that time, they don't have a wrestling program anymore. And then he was at BSC. and we'd bring our guys at Christmas over to BSC to wrestle. And so as a coach, I'd wrestle him, and I didn't think much of it because he had a hard time getting out from bottom. But at this time, he weighed about 235, 240. And then all of a sudden he came back at his second year in college, and all of a sudden, oh my, Brock, what did you do? And he says to me, he says, Coach, I lift every day. That's what he said. Coach, I lift every day. And
oh, wow.
And so I said, geez, and he went out to, and this goes back to one of the stories I have with him. Then they went to the Bison Open, and then he goes and he beats Minnesota's heavyweight at the Bison Open. And that's when Jay Robinson came up to me and he says, hey, you run this Dakota Grappler thing. What do you know about this Brock Lesnar? Can you get me this information? Because guess what? That's what he did. Then he went after Brock after that.
Really?
And so, yeah. And Jay Robinson, here's the funny story is he says, this Dakota Grappler, I think at that book you do, I think I could do it in Minnesota. And he tried a book for 2 to 3 years, tried to do a little book, but it's almost impossible. I'm such in a small state. I know everybody with wrestling.
Okay.
So you go to Minnesota, you've got 1,000 teams almost compared to my 50 teams per state or 100.
Okay.
So I have a relationship with every coach. Yes, Jay Robinson, but he's not going to do the sales.
That's a lot of work. Yeah.
He had a guy named Josh Krebs out of Minot who ran that. What did they have? They had a wrestling website. Oh man, I'm trying to think what
it was called,
because they did have a website for a little while.
Yep.
Jay Rob owned that. But now let's keep going with my questions. Like I said, we've been doing this, asking these questions, and we string them out quite a ways. Okay, so the next question. Here we go. Favorite number?
23. I was born on November 23rd. I always liked number 23, and then you got guys like Ryan Sandberg of the Cubs. Michael Jordan was 23. I'd say my second favorite number is 10. Favorite baseball player, Chipper Jones.
There we go. Atlanta Brave. You betcha. Yep. Best wrestler you've ever wrestled?
And unfortunately, probably that kid that beat me for the state title. His name was Rudy Ruiz. So he won Fargo that summer. He was a sophomore. I was a senior. He won 3 state titles, wrestled at Stanford, made the tournament a couple times. He would, it would either be him or a kid named John Dexter. John Dexter was a 3-time Wisconsin state champ, 149-1, but never wrestled in college. Wrestled him in grade school. I might go with John Dexter, actually. Rudy Ruiz, John Dexter. I'd probably take Dexter. Dexter was an animal.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I love the names. Any habit you learned in wrestling that you still do today?
I think it just comes down to, for me, it's just trying to eat halfway decent. And I try to take pretty good care of myself. I mean, I'm a big, I cycle. I do a lot of biking. And I think that's wrestling. Like you take care of, I try to do push-ups every day, just stuff like that I would say that's probably it, And I think too, from a broadcast, there is one. I guess I got another one. When I wrestled in high school, I'd always talk, and I'd go find a mirror. Like I'd go find a back bathroom or something, and I'd have a self-talk. Like I'd look at myself, it's like, like literally looking at myself in the mirror. Let's go get this, blah, blah, blah. Say a prayer, go do it. Every broadcast I do now, every time I go find a bathroom, I look at myself in the mirror and I say, that's what you're born to do. Big match today. Go get it. Go get it. Say a little prayer. Like I love one of the things I do, because I think the coolest thing about being in broadcasting, it's the next best thing to competing. Like the bathroom I go into at Carver Hawkeye, when I come out of that thing, I'm in the tunnel and the arena's right ahead. So I literally feel like, I seriously feel like I'm going to wrestle. That's what I feel like. And then you put the headset on, it's like putting the headgear on. National anthem plays. I wrestled 103 back in those days. You started at 103. So the national anthem to this day is my favorite song. It always will be, because anytime I heard that song, it was go time. And I get that same adrenaline rush broadcasting. So that'd be another one, the mirror talks.
Okay, that's great. Bill, any last questions? That's my quick fire questions, guys. Thanks for participating.
Wheat Thins or Triscuits?
Wheat Thins or Triscuits?
Yeah, I'm a Wheat Thins guy. Oh, yeah.
That's pretty good. No, I do appreciate everything you do for the sport, Shane. I've listened to you for a long time. And then when Jim said, hey, I got Shane's information, maybe he'll do this. I think you'd like it. Yeah. I'm going, oh, man, I tell you what, and I'm trying to step up my game a little bit, get more people on. I do appreciate it. Bill and I could talk wrestling forever, but you guys bring another flavor to it. And then like I said, every time we do these shows, it lifts my heart and my soul that wrestling's powerful out there. It's
absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you guys having me on, and thank you guys for what you're doing. I mean, you guys are the guys in the trenches getting it done because you love it. I mean, you guys love it. So thanks to, thanks again for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Okay. Thank you again. And Bill,
thanks for coming on, Shane.
Yeah,
hey, tell
you guys.
Tell us where we can follow you on social media, or where else we can see you.
All right, let's see here. I think I need to do a little bit better job with this. On Twitter, it is. Let's see here. Come on, Shane.
The real Shane Sparks, because there's a rapper that's Shane Sparks out there. You know that?
Oh yeah. And I think the other guys like got in trouble or so. You know, it's not exactly what you want your name to be associated with when you Google it, right? It's on Twitter. It is at Shane Sparks BTN, and then on Instagram, let's see if we got that. What that thing is? I should know this stuff like right off the top of my head. What is it? On Instagram, it is Shane_Sparks BTN. Shane_Sparks BTN. Yeah, thank you much.
Okay, one more question from Jim Makovsky to you. Who would have been the better wrestler, Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers?
Wow, that is actually a great question. Who would have been a better wrestler? Because Aaron Rodgers doesn't make many mistakes, but Brett Favre lets it fly, and he was very good. God, that is an absolute phenomenal question. Who would have been a better wrestler? God darn it.
I think Aaron Rodgers would have been the thinker. I think Brett Favre would have been the aggressor.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, they're so opposite. I mean, I can tell you this. You take those two as a quarterback and combine them, it'd be like darn near perfection. So different, but both just both in the top 0.5% to ever play the game. I grew up with Favre, so I got to go with Favre. Even though Aaron Rodgers is a much better quarterback than Favre is. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, is the best guy to ever play the position. Even though I'd rather have Favre as a teammate, I think Favre's a better leader. His skill set was phenomenal, but Favre was always good to make you have a couple F-bombs with those.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, gosh, but two great quarterbacks. I mean, this is crazy. I'm 45 years old. Favre became the starting quarterback, I think, when I was 16. I've been a Packer. I'm not a diehard Packer fan, but I like the Packers. I don't know what it's like to not have a quarterback that's not a Hall of Fame quarterback.
That's something.
That's pretty nuts.
How about this? Would that be on your bucket list for an interview? For you? Could you?
Favre?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
I'll get you his information. No, just kidding.
When I worked at the radio station, we did a Monday Night Football show every Monday, and I was the guy out asking the questions. So there was a time, Roger, and then I was in charge of like getting the guests their food and like, hey, what do you want to eat? But I remember it was Memorial Day. No, it wasn't Memorial Day. It was Labor Day, when it was myself, my son Austin, who at the time was probably 12, and Aaron Rodgers sitting down having dinner together. Us three. That was it. Us three. We got a picture of that. That was a pretty cool thing. I met Favre a couple of years ago. If I could do any interview, there's only one person on this planet that there's two people that I really want to meet. Two. Vince Scully, longtime voice of the LA Dodgers. I'd want to meet him. And then a guy that I want to meet, my all-time, I mean, I've been around the sport for a while and get to rub elbows with a lot of great wrestling people, past and present. But my all-time favorite college wrestler I've never met, and I really want to meet him, and that's Chad Zapital. He wrestled for the Hawkeyes.
Okay.
Never met Chad Zapital. Kyle Klingman sent me Chad's information. I have his phone number, and I'll probably send him a text sometime and say, hey, Chad, Shane Sparks, I'd love to meet you. If you ever get to Iowa City, can I buy you lunch? I want to meet Chad Zapital. Chad Zapital was a big reason that I fell in love with wrestling in high school. He was my guy. Like I love Chad Zapital.
Well, a great way to end, guys. We almost ended an hour and a half. Guys, thanks again. We will come to you again on Wednesday. New Dakota Grappler rankings should be out. come Tuesday night for Class A. Class B, I'll take a look at and see if I can round some up for that too. We do have region polls because we haven't met with one another. Now Class B has some, but we'll go from there. So Bill and I will catch you about 8 o'clock Wednesday night. So guys, see you again. Go out and promote wrestling. Bill, any last words?
I don't. Yeah, go watch some wrestling. Another big week of college wrestling coming up. We had a great weekend of international wrestling. We'll talk about that coming up too. But just go promote the sport. Go watch some wrestling. We're really in a pretty neat time is being able to watch it more than we've ever been able to go. We may not be able to get into all the venues. Everything's getting streamed. Everything, it's easier to follow a little bit. So just go and promote the sport.
Definitely. Well, Shane, thank you again, and we will catch you soon somewhere out there. Maybe you and Randy and I can go have a
Anytime, guys. Thanks again.
Thanks. You bet.
Thanks, Shane.